Remember when everyone was talking about that new Warner Brothers fighting game? The one where Shaggy could fight Batman? Or what about that monster hunting game that was going to be the next big thing? Maybe you recall that magical battle royale where you could cast spells and fly through the air? If these sound vaguely familiar, you're not alone. These games had their moment in the spotlight, then somehow slipped away into gaming's forgotten corners. The gaming industry moves fast. Every month brings new releases competing for our time and attention. In this endless cycle, some games get left behind, even when they had everything going for them. These aren't bad games we're talking about today. These are games that showed real promise, attracted dedicated communities, and offered something genuinely interesting. Yet somewhere along the way, they lost their grip on the gaming conversation. It's June 2022, and Warner Bros. Drops a trailer that breaks the internet. Shaggy from Scooby-Doo is throwing hands with Batman. Superman is getting comboed by Bugs Bunny. The internet loses its collective mind. Multiverus wasn't just another fighting game. This was a love letter to decades of Warner Bros. Entertainment, bringing together characters that fans had dreamed of seeing fight each other. When the open beta launched in July 2022, the numbers were staggering. Within its first month, Multiverus attracted over 20 million players. Twitch streams were pulling in hundreds of thousands of viewers. For a brief period, Multiverus was the biggest thing in gaming. The game had everything going for it. Free-to-play accessibility meant anyone could try it. The platform fighter format was easy to understand, but had depth for competitive players. The character designs were faithful while feeling fresh. Then, something strange happened. In June 2023, almost exactly 1 year after taking the world by storm, Multiverus went offline. The developers announced they were taking the game down to implement improvements and prepare for a full launch. The game came back in May 2024. The graphics were sharper, new characters had been added. Everything seemed designed to recapture that original magic. There was just one problem. Nobody was playing anymore. The relaunch peaked at around 114,000 concurrent players on Steam, a fraction of what the original beta had achieved. Within weeks, those numbers dropped even further. What went wrong? During the year-long hiatus, the gaming landscape shifted. Other fighting games captured competitive players' attention. When Multiverus returned, it was competing in a completely different environment. Maybe the biggest issue was momentum. When you take a game offline for a full year, you're asking players to remember why they loved it. You're competing against every new experience they've had since you've been gone. Long before Monster Hunter World brought the franchise to mainstream Western audiences, there was a gap in the market. Players wanted cooperative monster hunting experiences, but options were limited. Enter Phoenix Labs with Dauntless. When Dauntless launched its beta in 2018, it felt like the perfect solution. The game took the core monster hunting formula and streamlined it for a broader audience. Fights were faster paced. The crafting system was simpler. The art style was colorful and inviting. The free-to-play model was generous. Players could experience the full game without spending money. Cross-platform play meant friends could hunt together regardless of their device. Early adoption was strong. Each monster felt unique, requiring different strategies. The weapons were satisfying to use, offering distinct play styles that encouraged experimentation. Yet, something was missing. While Dauntless nailed the moment-to-moment combat, it struggled with long-term player retention. The progression system sometimes felt too shallow. Players would reach points where advancement slowed significantly. Monster Hunter World's 2018 release created unexpected competition. While Dauntless had carved out its niche as the accessible alternative, World proved that traditional Monster Hunter could appeal to mainstream audiences. Suddenly, Dauntless was competing directly with a AAA franchise. The game also faced the classic free-to-play dilemma. Finding the right balance between generous free content and attractive paid options proved challenging as player expectations continue to evolve. Today, Dauntless still exists and receives updates. However, It never achieved the massive mainstream success that its early momentum suggested was possible. It remains a solid game that many players simply forgot about, as other experiences captured their attention. In 2020, the Battle Royale genre was dominated by gunplay. Then Spellbreak arrived with a completely different vision. Imagine a Battle Royale where instead of picking up rifles, you're wielding elemental gauntlets that let you cast devastating spells. Picture soaring through the air with wind magic while hurling fireballs at opponents below. This was Spellbreak's promise, and for many players, it delivered something genuinely magical. The art style was gorgeous, with a painterly quality that made every match feel like exploring a fantasy illustration. Movement in Spellbreak felt incredible. Rather than running on the ground like most battle royales, players could use wind magic to fly, creating three-dimensional combat encounters that few other games could match. The learning curve was steep but rewarding. Mastering different elemental combinations required time and practice, but players who invested that effort were rewarded with incredibly satisfying gameplay moments. Despite its innovation, Spellbreak struggled to find its audience. The game launched during a crowded period, competing against established battle royales with massive player bases and marketing budgets. The complexity that made Spellbreak special also created barriers for new players. While traditional shooters have intuitive aiming mechanics, Spellbreak's spell system required learning entirely new skills. Many players bounced off before they could appreciate its depth. Queue times became a persistent problem. As the player base remained smaller than hoped, matchmaking struggled to create balanced matches quickly. Long waits between games hurt the game's momentum. In early 2023, the developers made the difficult decision to shut down Spellbreak's servers. The game that had once promised to revolutionize battle royales was gone, taking its unique magical combat system with it. The closure felt particularly tragic because Spellbreak offered something genuinely different. In a genre criticized for lack of innovation, here was a game that had reimagined what battle royale combat could be. Looking back at these three games, a pattern emerges. Each offered something genuinely appealing, yet all three struggled to maintain their initial momentum, facing challenges that extended beyond game design into the realities of modern gaming culture. These games highlight the double-edged sword of live service development. The promise of ongoing updates can keep communities engaged, but it also creates pressure to constantly evolve. Sometimes those changes improve the experience. Sometimes they alienate players who were happy with what they had. The silver lining is that innovation continues. The lessons learned from these games inform new projects. Gaming's rapid pace means that today's forgotten games might inspire tomorrow's breakthrough hits.